Welcome to the PAX East Indie Showcase. We are missing a couple of our indies. I'm guessing, they probably went to get a drink. It always happens every year. A couple of them forget this panel exists. All right, we're gonna start real quick. Down at my far left, introduce yourself, your company, and what game you're representing, and how big your team is.
I'm John C. Worsley. I'm with Clutch Play Games. We're a team of 4, and we're from Portland, Oregon. Our game is called Little Chomp. It is a touchscreen climber for iOS and Android.
And I'm Ben Perez. I'm for Cricket Studios. Our game is Orion's Forge. It's a physics puzzler with a narrative. And we're from Chicago. We're a team of 3.
I'm Josh Fairhurst from Mighty Rabbit Studios. Our game is Saturday Morning RPG. It's an episodic Japanese-style role-playing game set in a world inspired by 1980s Saturday morning cartoons and pop culture. And our team is 7 people.
Sounds fantastic.
I'm Jared Castle. I represent Pagoda West Games. We're based in Portland technically, but we're all over the world. So yeah, our game is Major Magnet for iOS and coming to Android soon. And so yeah, that's us.
I'm Henry Smith from Sleeping Beast Games, based in Montreal. It's mostly just me, but I've had help with music and art. And our game is called Space Team. It's a first-person shouting game.
My name is Jeff Callis. I work for Penny Arcade. I've been in the game industry 19 years. I'm currently the producer on the Rings Like Precipice of Darkness games, so I have a tiny bit of indie credit. Just a smidge. Let's get the FAQs out of the way before we open up to Q&A. Most of the session's going to be Q&A. I figure you guys are here to see them, talk to them, get your content answered. But let's start with the quick stuff. How long has your dev cycle been? We can start at this end and work our way back the other way. How long have you been working on your game?
So I made a very quick prototype, like part-time in about 2 weeks, just to prove the concept. And then it seemed like it was fun, so I then spent 3 months full-time working on the game before it was released on the App Store.
Okay, not too crazy.
Major Magnet took about 18 months to develop. We just released last month on the App Store, and we're going to release back in June, and we just ran into some polish, so so now it's out, and it's been an interesting journey. It's our first game, so yeah, we're really proud of what we've done.
The subtext was there. It's out. It's out. Yeah, it's out. You can buy it now.
So we're still working on Saturday Morning RPG, so it hasn't ended, but the first release on iOS took us about 1.5 years to put out. And we're still bringing it to like every platform under the sun, and I think I'm going to keep doing that for the next 20 years, so the dev cycle is ongoing forever.
That sounds like fun.
Much.
So Orion's Forge was probably a pretty short dev cycle. It was probably about 3 months total, although I think if you asked our artists, he would say it probably felt like a lot more. But it was a very short dev cycle.
Okay.
Clutch Play set out to make a game in 3 or 4 months, so of course it took like 8. But yeah, we built it with cross-platform compatibility in mind. We built our engine from the ground up to support Android and iOS, and it is out on both now. But yeah, it came out to about 8 months.
Okay, that's a good segue. So I was going to ask, what platforms did you guys use to create your games? And you guys created yours from scratch.
Indeed, yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah, it's called the Clutch Engine. It's not like, we're not like a vendor we're not going to turn it into a product, but it's reusable, and we built it with future extensibility in mind for that purpose.
But if any of you are looking for an engine for $50K, yes, yeah, I'm sure they'd be willing to license it to you.
We'll negotiate.
Okay.
We use Unity.
Oh, okay. Next, we're working our way back down this way. It's like a game of Snake.
We used Unity as well. That's let us come out on pretty much everything. We're putting out a new version next week, so that was really easy with Unity because we already made the iOS version, just put it over to Android, and we were able to put it on the UEI. So.
We used Corona SDK, which was able to port to Android and iOS really easily. They have really, just been really great. It's a 2D based engine, use Box 2D, so it's perfect for our game.
See, I told you they'd show up eventually. We're only missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. We're short on space. We're gonna have to. Oh,
we went to the wrong side.
There, if we can kind of. That's okay. You can lean over shoulders. Do you want to give him a lapel mic? All right. Sorry for the technical difficulties. They said they were on the wrong side of the building. I think that was code for beer. And some paper towels. Okay. Don't steal that mic. I'm going to do Q&A from this floor. Oh, this is it. Okay. Please share. All right. Quick introduction, our new folks. If our two new devs can introduce themselves and their game, their company, and how big your team is.
Yeah, my name is Damian Isla. I'm from Moonshot Games. We have a game called... Yes. The other guy who works on the game right now. The game's called Third Eye Crime, and it's a stealth, puzzle, noir, telepathy game. And I have extremely poor pathfinding because I went to the wrong side of the building.
I also went to the wrong side of the building, which is why I'm late. But I'm James from Comobius, and I'm a time surfer in Dean's Quest on iPhone. But time surfer is the one in the indie showcase today, so that's what I'm talking about.
I will not fault you for picking your other times. So, you guys missed out on some of the softball questions. I was trying to figure out exactly what defines an indie developer, and specifically a successful indie developer. And the closest definition I could come up with is you are a successful indie developer if you make enough money to barely pay your bills and fund your next game, maybe. So my question is this: how do you define your success or lack thereof, and where do you feel that what is your end game? I know, total softball question. We can start right in the middle.
You're giving me the hardest question to start on. I don't know. I mean, we've just been. All the people that work with me are really passionate about making games. So we don't even really care if we're making a lot of money. We just want to make games. We just want to make the things we love. So whether we're making money or not, we feel like we're pretty successful.
Does anyone have another? I really, my goal is to get bought and sell out.
Yeah, I mean, to us, indie gaming really just comes down to making the games that we wanted to play when we were a kid, and the money is only there to make us be able to make games in the future and pay our bills, like you said, and we just really we don't care about making tons of money. We love that people love our game and that it's getting out there and stuff, and we just love seeing people enjoy our game.
This was why I knew that answer would be like, just because we love games, and that's why I love indie.
That's what it is, yeah.
Quick show of hands, does anyone else have a full-time job outside of indie dev? Are you allowed to say, what do you do?
I have 2 jobs. I actually work 3 jobs. I work full-time at my company developing games, and then I sell video games on eBay full-time. So I also teach at a community college. I'm an online teacher though, so I don't have to work any hours.
I don't know if you can define a job that you can stay in your underpants all day for all 3 jobs, which is amazing.
I mean, it's still like 110 hours a week.
Okay. So at this point, then I can still lob goofy questions at him. But if anyone has any questions for any of the devs, feel free to step up to this floor mic This is your opportunity. Oh, I saw you raise your hand, but the mic's up here, sir. He's the guy who tried to trade me a shoe for a pin.
It's a really nice shoe.
If it was an official Penny Arcade shoe, I totally would have done it. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question. So I really enjoy Space Team because it brings me back to when I was a kid sitting on the couch playing a game with my friends. So there's no other games that I've been able to find that really require, besides Artemis, which is again. So, like, what were you thinking going into producing that game? Because no one else has seemed to want to touch a game that requires you to be physically located next to someone.
Yeah, well, first, you said that it takes you back to when you were a kid playing games on the couch with your friends. I still do that today as an adult, and I recommend that you do it as well. It's fun. But no, I play a lot of board games, and so a lot of my inspiration comes from board games because they're just more social naturally, and you have to be on the couch playing with your friends, and you know, there's rules and systems, but a lot of the fun comes from interacting with other players. And so I wanted to make a game that felt more like a board game, and a lot of people have said that's how it feels. So yeah, the board game Space Alert actually was a big inspiration for me. I was also inspired by Johann Sebastian Joust, the physical game with move controllers. I don't know if you know that, but I really liked how Doug sort of facilitates play through technology in a way that it blew my mind when I first saw that being played. So yeah, that was kind of my main inspiration.
Thank you very much. Next question. You could have just come up to the mic. I wouldn't have mocked you. I already mocked you once. I won't do it again.
It's fine. I love being mocked. It's like a weird thing for me. As indie developers, do you feel that you making games not only improves the game market in general, but encourages console? I mean, I'm sure that maybe the profit margins aren't as big as, for example, a company like Bethesda or BioWare, but do you still think you're encouraging console and other medium of games to be better and to be more proactive in user response?
Are you affecting change through the industry?
I don't really know, but when I went to GDC for the first time, a lot of people came up to me and said that they'd heard of Saturday Morning RPG and they were looking at it, and some of them were guys from Obsidian, and they're making a South Park RPG that is kind of like Saturday Morning RPG in that it has a lot of ridiculous attacks and stuff like that. And I like to think I might have inspired them. I don't know if I did, but I like to think it makes me feel good. So maybe.
So maybe spinning that around, I hate to say it because I think it's everyone kind of accepts it as the truth now, but the only real great innovation is coming out of the indie scene. Well, why is it? I mean, we all know that the margins and the cost of dev and things. How do you think that you guys can take this indie philosophy and perhaps gain a wider audience, gain those AAA title numbers? What's it going to take for indie to stop being called indie and be called mainstream?
I don't totally agree that innovation is only...
No, not only, but the majority. You know,
sure,
fine. If you don't agree with me, I love it. Go.
I think the majority of a certain kind of innovation is happening in indies, but of course there's innovation at a different scale, which is also happening very much at the big AAA.
For example?
Well, I don't know. Think of like the story beat sequencing of Far Cry 2 or something like that, or well, I guess Portal 2 did a lot of these, so never mind.
Portal 2 is a great example of the big companies succeeding. No, I'm just curious. We've hosted this panel several times, and I hear, I don't mean to bore the audience, the same thing where everyone loves indie, but it's hard to, we made the joke earlier about what is success as an indie. What is it going to take? I mean, we've seen a few examples. Portal, Minecraft. Do we need more of those stories for it to be mainstream, or do we need people just to be able, or do we need the consumers to adapt to go through these other distribution channels that you have to do to get?
Right now it's discoverability. That's the biggest problem for indies. I think if people were able to find the games easier and be able to sort through the ones that aren't very good, because there is a lot of really bad indie games, If they could sort through the ones that are good and find the ones that fit their taste, I mean, actually good is relative, so, you know, somebody might think a game that I think is awful is really good, so that doesn't even solve discoverability, but if people could find the games, I think that would make indie games more mainstream. That's the big problem right now.
Interesting. I want to get this question, but I wanted to come back to discoverability if no one has a follow-up about that.
Well, I crap with coding and any of that. I just twiddle my thumbs and play games and I make music. So my question is more like, how do you go about finding the people, or really the right people, to get the sounds and the music to be in your games?
Well, I know for us, we really search far and wide to find the perfect person that's not only going to give us the right type of sound, but going to fit our team. And if they don't fit our team, then they're not gonna understand our wishes, and just kind of combine as a synergy and just make something. So, you know, we'll say we want a sound that sounds kind of like this, but will, you know, kind of look like that, and they'll come back and give us something exactly what we wanted. And so it makes it really hard, but also rewarding when you find the right person, and you just kind of know when you find the right person to work with. And so, you know, I mean, we looked forever for a programmer for our game, and we weren't looking for someone with tons of experience in the gaming industry, or tons of experience programming, and a lot of people do that. They'll look for experience, and for us it was all about the just compatibility with our team.
What resources did you use to get back to this? Because I'm sure he wants to know, like, how do I get other devs to start to discover me? So what resources do you use to find talent?
We went to like meetups and like looked on resumes on Craigslist and just, I mean, everywhere. I mean, just,
anyone else have?
I
don't want that. No, I just was curious if there were other, maybe more unconventional methods.
In contrast, I just asked my friends if they wanted to help me, and they said yes. And luckily, my friends are pretty awesome, so
have awesome friends. That's your answer.
We used freesound.org and just created an attribution list, so we kind of went the lazy route. For our music, we just took a crapshoot and asked Vince Nicola if he would do it. He's the guy who did Transformers, the animated movie, and Rocky IV. Really, the worst you can say is no, and then he said yes. So, it kind of worked out.
You literally aimed for a star.
Yeah, we got it. We just, really, that's a crapshoot, but who knows? That's awesome. It might work out.
For audio in particular, we benefited from the partial collapse of the Boston games industry. When 38 Studios fell apart, we rushed in. We got a guy who was so far above our pay grade, it was ridiculous. There's a guy named Duncan Watt, who has done work for League of Legends and Bioshock Infinite. He also did our beautiful jazz soundtrack for our game.
So the answers are have awesome friends and hope a big company implodes. Right, next.
Okay, stop me if you've heard this one before. Minecraft, indie or not, still, 1 in a million or not. Is that something that you can reasonably aim for? Try to reach?
Doesn't even know Notch personally. So yeah, was Minecraft a 1 in a million? Can its success be duplicated? And at what point does indie stop being indie?
I think it's a false dichotomy. I think studios can make indie decisions and have indie mentality, and they can also have enjoy money and want to go mainstream. No. I think there's a place for both, and a lot of indie games shouldn't become mainstream because they're too outlandish and too niche. And but some indie games would be great if millions of people played them. I think that there's obviously there's a place for both.
I wouldn't be down there.
I just don't want to answer every question.
No, that's fair. Right. They're all hoping secretly they become the next Minecraft success story. I hope one of them gets it.
So when you get up and you decide you want to make an indie game, you know, you get your friends together or you find the perfect people for the group. How do you decide on what platform they're going to develop for? You know, do you get up to them, I'm going to do something for PC, you want to do something for iOS, you want to do something for Android, or you know, do you just wait out, look at the audience and see what the demand is for, you know, where the best games are, or like for example, or iOS, you have the App Store, you know, tons of apps to App Store, and people always go there. But is that always the deciding factor?
Good question. Yeah, what made you decide which platforms to put your games on?
Well, for us, it was mostly experience. We'd actually just spent 3 years working under a different publisher, making iOS games. It's what we knew how to do. We were getting a good idea of the market, so we just kind of went with what we knew.
I think you can also, when you start coming up with an idea for a game, you always imagine the device or a system that you're going to be playing it on, and you start imagining, like, a game and its scope, and you say, well, that is or isn't going to work on iOS, and it is or isn't going to work on PC. So you start having that in mind when you're really imagining what the game is going to be. So,
okay. All right.
I'm just going to say that, yeah, when I decided to do Space Team, it was supposed to be a really small project. I needed something quick that I could get. So I'd never done an iPhone game before, so I wanted something that I could learn from, and so I picked iPhone or iOS because it forced me to stay small in scope. Because I have really ambitious ideas, and I didn't want it to get carried away. So it forced me to do a small idea.
Self-limiting. That's
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
I'm a game design student at SCAD, and for a while I was working on a 15-person team on a student project, and it fell apart because nobody knew how to manage a 15-person team. Weirdly, it was called Exodus. So, as a total reaction to that, I'm now working totally solo on a game called Terrorists vs. Wizards.
It would have been better if the game's name was Alone.
Yeah. Have you guys experienced working completely solo, and is that dangerous waters, or what am I gonna find out down the road?
I started working on Saturday Morning RPG by myself, and as the project evolved, more people got interested and wanted to work with me. I don't think it's dangerous to tread alone. On the topic of student projects, I met most of my team. And this guy right here, this guy Kurt, I met him when I was doing my final student project in college, and that's the project that actually got people interested in, my company and working on games. So I don't think it's dangerous to go solo. I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
Any word of advice?
Just get outside sometimes.
Make sure to network with everyone you can. Show your game to everyone you can, because that's how you're going to meet the other people that might join you and help you with your games.
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize for not doing my homework on everyone, but I had a specific question that I think everyone can answer, but I want to focus on Henry and Space Team. I love the game, and I'm super interested because your business model seems very unique, and it seems very catered to Space Team, and I wanted to know kind of what the thought process was in that, like how did you decide on that, and maybe you could explain it for the people who don't know.
Yeah, so it was originally supposed to just be a practice project, and I was going to make it free because, and it's still free, because I felt that charging for it up front would really hinder adoption and stop people from sharing it, because you need to get other people to play the game just in order to play it. It's multiplayer only, and so having to convince 4 of your friends to not only download the game but also pay $1, I think was going to be really prevent it from growing. And so I think it's really important that it's free. And then halfway through the project, when I realized that it might be something that other people would enjoy, I added the upgrades in there as a tip jar, basically. So if you enjoy the game, you buy a few upgrades and you get something, and you give me a few dollars. So it came on actually quite late when I decided to charge money for it.
And, my follow-up would be like, is that sort of a sustainable system? Like, is momentum building and
not quite sustainable yet, but it could get there. When I release an Android port or localize it into I'm working on an Android version, but it's not ready yet. There's still some issues, so I can't actually promise anything now. But I think that'll expand the user base, and yeah, I'm hoping to localize it as well. And if those things happen, maybe I can sustain myself.
Does anyone else have some observations about the pricing model that they chose, or why they chose?
We made a horrible, horrible mistake when we priced our game at free. Mobile gamers tend to play games for like 30 minutes and then forget that they downloaded it after that. And we gave away a full episode of our game that takes about an hour and 30 minutes to beat. And then it's like, hey, you want to buy the next one? And like maybe 5% of players ever got to that screen that was like, hey, you want to buy this next thing? So we should have been paid if we wanted to make any money, because that was a really bad decision to be free.
Sorry, now I just feel sorry.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question is based on hardware performance. I developed for Unity iPhone, and a lot of the forums say that you should shoot for the 3GS in horsepower, but that only gives me 40,000 polys to work with. And the game I'm working on, that's not possible. And so I'm starting at the 4S, which gives me 120,000 polys. Do you think it's a better idea to develop for iPhones that were made 4 years ago, or should you actually develop for now, like PC?
Good question. That's very granular and specific. Well, I know for Major Magnet, we developed it for the lowest that we could possibly run it on. And we want to, you want to, obviously want it to be on as many devices as possible, but sometimes, you might have something that will only work on a later device. And so we just made sure that it was able to run on the lowest. We push it as far as we can, and if there's like a texture that wouldn't run on the 3GS, then we kind of like try to work around it and make it so that it does run perfectly on that. And then we know for sure it's going to run perfectly on anything past that. And I think it's, it depends on the game really. I mean, our game is all 2D, so it's not going to have this intense 3D polys and stuff, but it also, it's really rewarding seeing it run on older devices. And I think there's still a bit of a market for it, and you should try to shoot for as the wide of audience as you can.
It's kind of different from that and might be only applicable to us, but we started Saturday Morning RPG saying, oh, we're going to be on 2nd gen iPod, and we shot for 2nd gen iPod, and then as the project grew, we just realized that wasn't going to happen. And about a week before we released, we decided we're not doing iPod 2 anymore. So I would actually say, like, aim for the lower ones, but you might end up not being able to be on them. And that'll at least make it so that your game runs well on the one that's right above the 3GS. For our latest game that we're working on right now, I'm going to do a shameless plug, Breach and Clear. We were originally targeting 3GS, but as it's gotten bigger and more graphically intense, we've had to drop that and scale to the other one. But it means that it's running that much better on the other devices. So we'll just pretend we were never going to do 3GS.
No, it's not much different than what I was saying. It's just, you want to shoot for the low, and you want to, but you might accept that you're not going to get there, and you try to get it working on as much as you can, and if you have to scrap it, it's not the end of the world. It's like 5% of the people or whatever. And you the next one.
Yeah, this is a bit more touchy-feely. Do you think it holds the market back by developing only for older titles? Because most modern games actually develop for future PCs.
I don't think that there's a whole lot of people in the grand scheme of things that are going to upgrade their phone just to play the latest and greatest games. I mean, there's definitely a minority that are going to do that, but there's, the fact that there's still just a huge percentage of people that are running iOS 5 shows that, people just, they get whatever came with their contract and they keep it for 2 years. So if you're gonna shoot for the latest and greatest, then you're gonna just forget about
you're limiting your market. Yeah. Okay, just quick, try to talk right in the mics because the people in the back are gonna have a hard time hearing you.
Is this close enough?
You're good.
As Jeff argued earlier, or suggested, we look to indie games for innovation that we find lacking in AAA, and other issues that have arisen, have been suggested about AAA is that they're heteronormative, hypermasculine. There are problems with the perspective from which AAA games are created. Should we also be looking to indie games to form activist positions on issues like climate change, multiculturalism, gender and sexuality?
So looking at indie games not just as a catalyst for innovation within gameplay mechanics, but innovation within cultural perspectives.
Exactly.
Games that change the world. Go ahead, who's got one?
We're not personally shooting to change the world, but I know that other indie devs have been saying things that they're really trying to do things differently. Robert Boyd, who he works with, has been tweeting about how his next game is going to have a female protagonist because there's a serious lack of that. So I think indie developers are trying. I know we're being lazy. We're not trying personally, but there's other guys who are doing it better than we are.
Yes, they should, but not us.
Is there an incentive that's lacking to promote games that look for a wider perspective?
Sales? I don't know. Do they?
I think as an indie developer, if you take risks like that, it's definitely something that I'm sure plenty of people want to. But we're just trying to get by, and if you take a huge risk, you could lose everything. And the bigger companies, they don't want to take the risks because they know what works, and they're just going to keep doing what works. And so it's just a tough situation for everybody, really.
That's interesting that even risk averse trickles down to. You want to do what you're passionate. Indie games is a lot of passion, but you got to make money to live.
Yeah,
and people are afraid.
Yeah. Some of these games are getting promoted though and getting exposure. Like if you look at the IGF this year, there are some really interesting games like Dysphoria and Card Life that are exploring, telling really interesting stories and aren't like traditional games. And so people are starting to learn about these games and looking at them. So I think there's definitely an audience for that, and indie games are a great way to do it. You're not trying to pander to the mainstream necessarily.
Thank you.
And there's also all kinds of revenue sources that are not consumer-based, right? Like, in other countries, governments support games in various ways for issues, discursive games or whatever they're called. Lots of companies, Boston is a huge center for educational games, and they're funded for serious games, and they're funded by all kinds of people, including universities and nonprofits, NGOs, all that kind of thing. So I think it is actually much more sustainable now to do an issue game than it would have been 5 years ago or anything like that.
And I guess to kind of go back on what I said, you did mention climate change. The student project I made with Kurt was about climate change in a way. We were actually in the Serious Games Showcase in Orlando, Florida at ITSEC, which is a really it was kind of boring, but it was a really cool conference. But the game Terraform was all about how humans had polluted the Earth and they needed to go find another planet. So you had kind of a gun that shot chemical elements out, and you had to go terraform another planet for humans to move to.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
My question kind of ties into a lot of the questions I've already asked. Do you think, for each of your companies, that the future of indie games is something that you want to keep to portable devices like the iOS, like the Android, tablet-based thing, or is PC still a big and important factor?
It's a good question. I think it also touches on the discoverability problem that we talked about earlier. Is the future? What platforms are you planning for your future releases, and what are the viability of success on those platforms?
So we're taking a gamble with Ouya because it's shipping next week, and they've already got 60,000 pre-orders through Kickstarter. So it's kind of like, why not go there? We're releasing on PC, Mac, and Linux. We're on Steam Greenlight right now, but that's been a huge hurdle because everyone on Greenlight hates iOS games. iOS games don't belong on Steam. It doesn't matter that we've been working on a PC port for a year and are being really careful with it. They're just like, no, it's an iOS game. It automatically is invalidated as a game. So we want to be on Steam. It's just right now we can't get on it because Greenlight's the gatekeeper right now, and Greenlight doesn't want us.
This panel is making me more sad than I anticipated.
So Saturday morning RPG on Greenlight.
All right, everyone, go to Greenlight right now.
Well, I wonder if there's a desire to maybe switch, like if you are working pretty much solely on iOS games, and maybe you want to approach PC gamers, or is the growing consumer base for Android and like iPhones, is that where you want to target? Is that your target audience, or are you still kind of looking at a general scope of whoever wants to buy my game?
Well, I think there was an interesting podcast on joystick that I saw recently. I can't take credit for the idea, but Robbie of Flambeer suggested that convenience for going to a particular platform is a huge deal. And right now, platforms like Android, iOS, and potentially in the future, PlayStation 4 are potentially very convenient to move to. And it's those platforms, and PC as well, that are attractive because it's easy to move to those platforms.
So yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to resources and ability to move over versus the potential for it. Right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, so I've been a developer at a big company for a while, and I've been working on a game with a friend for a few months. So coming out of that, my question is, for those of you who stopped a big boring job to do what you're doing now, what kind of made you decide now is the time to do that?
Do you want a roadmap to get out of your job?
Yes,
please. Well, I worked at a boring IT job for, years, and I had, I could work there the rest of my life and everything, and, the money was good and everything, and one day I just pretty much picked up and quit and moved across the country and started a game company and thought, there's always you can always say that, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow and stuff, but for me, it was just, if I didn't do it now, I just was never going to do it, and so I just, picked up and quit, and I, had some savings and stuff, so I started a company, and here today, so I just think if you don't take the risk, then you're always going to wonder what would happen if you didn't do it.
I can also recommend timely layoffs. Work for me.
Unfortunately, we're doing pretty well.
I worked at Bungie for a while, and I left Bungie and started Moonshot. And I didn't consider Bungie boring, and even though I sort of looked with envy at what was going on in the indie space and thought, man, I could do that, I should try that out. And then, we had some early success with our first game, which was a side-scroller called Fallen Frontier, and then that ended up basically falling apart. Its funding didn't materialize, and so I actually went back. And I think what I find is that one side gives me vast appreciation for the other side. So I really enjoyed going indie. I was so excited about it, and by 2.5 years in, I went back and actually worked at Irrational for a while and BioShock Infinite, and I was like, oh my God, someone who maintains the email servers, and someone keeps the temperature hot, in here. And of course, everything I learned about professionalism and being a good engineer and being doing good production, I learned in the big studios. So I learned a tremendous amount from seeing both sides of the coin. So you may well leave your big boring job, and then a year or two later it'd be like maybe you're ready to go back and bring your new skills, because you certainly will gain huge new skills by being on your own and by fearing tomorrow every day.
Okay. Good answer. Thank you very much.
Hi. Are there any really cool, interesting ways to do narrative that you can only do in mobile? Mobile's the best way to tell this particular story.
Wow. Let's work on this.
Okay, thanks.
We're all thinking.
I'd say
they come up with it, they're going to keep it for make that game.
I'd say that
I just had an idea.
Henry's game, the narrative between players that forms as they're shouting at each other, that's a narrative.
I actually am in a space team tournament tomorrow. Do you have any tips?
Come to the source.
Am I allowed to give tips?
You go right ahead. Is there a cheat code or something that you can?
No, there are no cheat codes, but when I play competitively, you have to speak over each other.
Sure.
You can eliminate certain words that you don't need. I don't think you should get any more.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Letting the players create the narrative, you giving them the tools to drive their own narrative, I think is a great answer.
I mean, I have a really great story from the first GDC I ever went to, the Copenhagen Game Collective, the guys who did Johann Sebastian Joust. They had a game there called Button. And there's a controller, and basically you have to go do some ridiculous thing that it tells you to do, like hold a button down for 20 seconds, and everybody else is fighting you to stop you from holding the button down. And my friend Robert got punched in the face. Like, he actually got punched in the face. And I was like, what the hell? This game is serious. That was the best thing. I bought the game, and I was like, this is going to be played at every party I ever have. It gave me a story to tell other people about a game. And it wasn't the story in the game, it was the story the game created.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Hi. So you guys are all mobile developers, and we've had about 5 years since the rebirth of the smartphone. Everybody's got smartphones, tablets, things like that. Why is no one working on second screen gaming, the bring your own device type of gaming, where your tablet is augmenting your play simulator as a control panel, your phone is acting as an in-game phone where you can receive voicemails, text messages, involving those mobile devices we all have with another system, a console or a PC?
Oh, Jesus. Oh my God.
I knew a guy who worked, I'm trying to remember the name of this game. There's this game that used to send like faxes and it would call your phone.
Yes.
I can't remember what it was called, but Majestic, yes. I met one of the guys who worked on it, and he said that they got like legal threats from people whose their spouses would pick up the phone, and it would be like somebody who's like, I'm gonna kill you. It's dangerous to do things like that. I think there's smart ways to do it, but that might be one reason why developers aren't doing it, because of that game. I don't know.
If you think it's hard to jump through the hoops of one corporation to get your game on a platform, square it. Not just double it, square it by trying to get the same game that they have to work together.
So Microsoft's done it with Microsoft Smart Glass, right?
Have they? Just ask, what's your personal, well, anyway. The future is yet to be seen in this particular realm, sir. Does anyone else have any observations aside from just if discoverability is an issue on one platform, making them buy the game again or shifting it over is a huge consumer problem. I didn't mean to answer, I apologize.
I mean, I think it's something that I want to experiment with it. I want to try it out. I think there's interesting things that can be done with it.
I think it's super cool. I mean, I love the Forza where you can put the 3 monitors and get the whole thing. I love that stuff, but there's no consumer feasibility for it.
Hey guys. That was louder than I expected. So, one of you mentioned earlier, and I'm sorry I forget whom, but that due to a sad turn in the prosperity of the game industry, you luckily scooped up an audio engineer who was above your pay raise, or payroll. Grammar's beyond me at this point.
It's a ringing endorsement for the Rutgers University shirt you're wearing.
My brother goes to Rutgers. He's really smart. So I was just wondering if you guys, specifically with audio engineers, whether that is music and or sound engineering, but like audio guys, what is attractive to you? What's lucrative? What makes you guys say, I want that guy?
Someone who understands your game, really. Like, you can't just go out and, if you're making an arcade game, you can't go out and find someone who's going to make classical, orchestrated music. You gotta look for someone who's gonna, grow up with the same kind of skills or the same kind of era that you grew up in, and understand where you're coming from and what type of game. If you're making an arcade game, you want someone who's gonna, have that experience.
So to twist his question a little bit, what is it when I assume that there's a little bit of a hiring process of some sort. There's a tryout, send me a sample, look at your portfolio, what skills are you looking for aside from like genre compatibility? I'm sure there's at some point you're offering feedback. What specifically kind of skills are you looking for when you're going through this process of trying to find an audio engineer or a composer? You guys are killing me.
I don't know.
I am dying a slow death.
I don't know. I've met more audio engineers than I've met anybody else in the industry. It seems like there's a lot of people who want to do audio for games, so you really got to try super hard. And you might also have to just be lucky and have friends who are making games, because your friends are going to be the ones who are going to hire you first. Just from personal experience, I've seen that most sound guys on teams have been friends with somebody else on the team. They've met through that. But when we were at, because we were at MagFest, obviously, there was going to be a lot of sound designers, but when we were at MagFest, we got like 100 sound designer cards. We have like a stack like this high now of sound designer cards from MagFest, and I can't remember any of them anymore. So like maybe do something to really differentiate yourself when you meet people.
So the answer is, if you're into audio and you want to be into games, to choose a different field.
Let's think of that. Can I ask a really quick secondary question, just to you? You were talking about how, and I've been thinking about this all day, how you would more readily choose someone that understood where you're coming from, whether it's genre or a console, being someone who is interested in tons of different types of music, whether it's classical or 8-bit or rock. What are your thoughts on mashing things together in the portfolio? Like, how should I present and be like, hey, you might not like the first song, but track 12 might be it?
Yeah, that's a good question. You get, like, I get a lot of requests, and there'll either be like the classical or the like 8-bit, and that's the majority of requests I get. And really, you just gotta like listen to like a soundtrack like Mario Galaxy or something. It's like its own. When you hear it, you know what it is, and you really just gotta differentiate yourself and make it so that when someone hears your music, they know it's you, and they don't be like, oh yeah, that sounds like this other guy I heard or something. And I mean, for our sound designer, we'll kind of just show him a screenshot of a level, and he'll come back and like he sees the character and kind of tries to design the sound based on what he sees from the level, and that's really important to me, at least.
That was really awesome. Thank you a whole bunch, you guys.
With the exception of Orion's Forge and Little Chomp, all of you chose to start with iOS first. What made you choose iOS versus starting with Android?
I know this answer.
It's super easy.
I don't have an Android phone, so.
That was not the one I was thinking.
That's even easier. With me, it's how many devices there are. There's like 7 different, there's more than 7. There's so many different graphics processors. There's so many different handsets. It's like guaranteeing that you can run on all of them is absurd. I've met with a guy who made Temple Run because he just recently moved to our area, and he was just saying they had to hire an extra person just to deal with the ridiculous emails they got on Android. They'd be like, it's not running on my jailbroken HTC whatever running firmware 2.0. It's just ridiculous, the amount of permutations of devices there are.
Just because you're on Android doesn't mean you're on Android. It just doesn't happen.
And then people will slam you on Google.
Yeah, I mean, our very first review on Android with Little Chomp was 1 star, crashes on Nexus 4, and it's like, it ran on every other device that we tested, and the brand new fast Google phone just crashes for some reason, just obscure OpenGL thing, and yeah, just literally thousands of devices to test. It's a hornet's nest for QA.
Some of you are using Unity for your engine. Doesn't that assist in? Not at all.
No. I just spent the entire last month getting the game to work on the Ouya, just the Ouya. I don't know if it will work on everything else, and we have an Xperia Play also, and there's this weird graphical error where things will show up just white. It's just, the texture's gone, it's white. We don't know why. At the same time, the Xperia Play has controls, so we have to make sure we support that, and then we have to make sure, there's gonna be people who are gonna be like, Adrian there, his game Muse on iOS, or on Android, he has reviews like, it doesn't work with the PlayStation 3 controller. What? That you're gonna give me a 1 star because it doesn't work with a PlayStation 3 controller? It's like, I'm supposed to test it with every Bluetooth controller, every handset, every firmware, everything, and you can't do it. It's too hard. At least with iOS, you kind of have a closed thing, you know it's going to be one of 10 different devices, and it could be on a couple different versions of iOS, but it's pretty uniform.
Basically,
overall.
the general thing is it's all the same.
So yeah, now you know the dirty little secret of putting games on Android. It sucks.
My question is, what's the best plan of attack on creating awareness for a game? Because I feel like there are millions of really good games that come out, but if you don't know how to get people, I feel like if it's good, it's not enough. Is that true or false?
How do you get your game out besides winning a place in the Boston or the PAX East Indie Showcase? That probably helps.
I lost.
If you missed that, he didn't make the cut. He tried.
We hired a marketing intern out of a community college in the area. He was like a guy who was doing business at a community college, and he was just like, I want to get in the games industry and I'll work for free. And he spent all day just emailing places, cold calling places, and he was really good at it. He even cold called Atlas and got to talk to like the top guy at Atlas, because we were looking for a publisher at the time. And normally they wouldn't ever talk to a random guy, but he pretended he knew him. So he was like, hey, can I talk to Bill? And it was his first name. So the secretary was just like, okay, I'll transfer you right now. Obviously he knows his first name, so he's exactly right. Because we got an email from the guy the next day, and I was like, all right, send a bill. We don't do iOS games, but I'll look at it. Didn't really pan out, but on top of that, he contacted pretty much every site, and we ended up getting about 8 reviews the first day we released. Kotaku covered us, Touch Arcade covered us. He got us a meeting with Apple. Really, he suggested just bombing an Apple meeting that our friends had. We just kind of sat in there, and it worked out for us. But it was his idea, so I would find a person who wants to do marketing and get them on as an intern. And just have them specifically do marketing. It's as important as design or programming or sound or any of the other facets of gaming, and most indies totally underestimate marketing.
Is that kind of standard through everyone on yours?
Yes. He hired one more person than we did, so yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chuck.
Hi, Chuck.
I'm not a game developer, I'm not gonna lie. I have never made a game. I will never make a game. Buttons are confusing. As a consumer.
Go ahead, Chuck.
As a player of games, how can I responsibly play by, I mean, I know I can buy games, that's one thing. But what can I do to further I like the indie development group, just in general. Because, well, I get to play lots of games. I don't have to like save up all of my should-be on textbook money for one game. And then play it for 5 days and fail the next test. So what can I do as a consumer almost responsible consumer, to further the indie development market?
Take a course in PR marketing and volunteer as an intern. Just for you, Chuck. I'm sorry I was smart ass just to you. So, as a consumer, what consumers do, I think everyone appreciates those champion consumers who end up.
And yeah, I mean, to really further the cause is just go on Twitter and talk about your favorite indie games, go on Facebook, talk about it, post blog posts about it, post YouTube videos. YouTube videos are surprisingly good at driving people to download games. Like a lot of games that get tons of YouTube videos, that usually equates to tons of downloads. So really just, like you said, champion your favorite games. That's the best thing to do, other than directly give the indie developer money.
Well, for iOS, at least, for iOS, it's a lot about word of mouth, so, tell your friends about it, and I think that's half the battle for iOS, is just, getting noticed, and, the press is all good and everything, but just, tell your friends if you like your game, they'll tell their friends, and that's the best way to go, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. So with platforms like the App Store and Google Play and Steam, they're all sort of inherently closed in that you're at the whim of Apple or Google or Valve or whoever. But they're great for indie games because they provide you with a storefront and a way to be visible in front of more consumers and a way to get paid easily. What are some things, I guess you could argue those points as well, but what are some things that those platform holders could do to make your lives better, I guess?
Get rid of green light.
Anyone else? Does anyone else want to bite the hand that feeds you and criticize your only method of distribution?
Hey,
No?
Gabe Newell said he doesn't like green light. Well, he didn't really say that, but he kind of inferred it.
Look at the backpedal now. No solutions? We haven't figured this out? No, it's tough. We've dealt with it too.
It's hard to get to know Apple as an indie developer. I was just talking to him about, like, how do you schedule a meeting with Apple? How do you get them to even care about you? And I think that's a problem. Like, if the platform holders made themselves more available to talk with indie developers and have them send early versions of games and get that dialogue going, it would kind of eliminate the need of mobile publishers and stuff like that. It would give indie developers direct access to the people like Apple, because if you want to get featured with Apple, you really got to make sure you're on their radar. So that's what I'd like.
Well,
I think the non-answer almost spoke more volumes than anything, but yeah, it's not a pleasant situation. Thank you.
So my question is, I'm currently in the very early stages of developing a game. And I guess in the indie realm, I feel like there's a really large push for, like, indie, like you said earlier, there's this, like, innovation is coming from the indie sector. And I feel like there's this large push of, like, you have to make a game that, like, has a certain feature or tells a story a certain way or does something differently than everything else in order to be recognized. Whereas, like, I mean, my game, I think I have a really good framework for it, and I think I have, like a good mechanical background for it, like the way the game plays, but in a traditional sense, it really just boils down to a 2D platformer in which there are like billions of them. So I guess my question is, without that, like, oh, this game is, you know, Limbo, it's all black and white, it's all artsy, or this game is Bastion and has a badass narrator that smokes rolled up carpets for a living. How do you distinguish yourself as just someone who's indie, who's not like a bigger publisher or like a bigger developer?
I've heard of backhanded compliments, those are backhanded insults.
Well, Major Magnet's a 2D platformer, you know, and we didn't really try to do anything. I mean, we have a different control scheme, so I guess we're kind of different that way, but otherwise we didn't really try to differentiate ourselves. We just made a game that we thought would be fun, and then we just prototyped it until it was fun to play, and we just were having fun competing against each other playing it and stuff. And then the game, you know, we loved the game, and we figured, you know, it doesn't matter what other people think because we loved it, and we'd hope other people would see the love that we put into it, and that's all it boiled down to for us.
It kind of depends on what kind of recognition you want also. Like, do you want recognition in money, or do you want recognition in, like, press talking about you all the time? Because as far as I can tell, I don't think Super Hexagon has made a ton of money. It's a fantastic game, and the press talked about it a lot, but just judging from the Game Center leaderboards, it doesn't seem like that many people bought it. It's not like he's rolling to the bank with millions of dollars from it. But we have friends in Raleigh that just put out a game that's like Minecraft Tower Defense. It doesn't really do too much different, but I'm pretty sure they just made like $500,000 in 1 week. So it depends on what kind of recognition you want.
Okay. Thank you. Last two questions here.
This is certainly isn't a condemnation of you guys, but this panel is extremely homogenous. And so my question to you as developers in the indie scene is, are there specific hurdles or barriers that you faced as white males that you could sit there and say, man, if I was a female, or man, if I was African American, this would be tougher, and do you have any advice for those people?
Wow. Let's get deep. Are there any obstacles you would have faced had you not been who you are?
Nothing occurs to me. I mean, we are who we are demographically just by virtue of being born the way we are, and the game that we made doesn't really reflect anything specific about our ethnicities or genders. And you know, the entire App Store process, you know, they don't know what color we are, what gender we are. You know, the game went up, and there's no narrative to the game that really reflects. You know, I don't think any of us on the team are a caterpillar or wanted to like eat fruit. So like our process. Well, I love fruit, but it wasn't like my primary goal in life. So in any case, I feel like the sort of serious issue that you're bringing up maybe doesn't really apply in terms of the process of we're just some people that made a game and we uploaded it to Apple and it got approved. I'm pretty sure if I had been a different ethnicity, we probably still would have been approved. And, you know, not to make light of it, but it's just, you know, the frictionlessness of it. You know, the fact that anyone can spend $99, get in the dev program, and upload a binary. Unless we were trying to speak to a story that was more serious, I don't think we're going to run into a story like that or an issue like that.
Yeah, I think it's a minor cultural issue where we just need to encourage to participate in the industry. It's not, there are barriers, unfortunately, but indie, it seems, would be one that hopefully would have a little less because you're working for yourself. Just ideally, the people are...
Sure.
Yeah.
So as a follow-up, do you have plans, or what would you do to encourage those people to do those things?
I just want to jump in on the last part of the question. I started my company at the same time that two of my friends, Lena and Naomi, they're two Asian females, they started their company at the same time, and they've gotten a $300,000 investment. I haven't gotten a $300,000 investment. They're doing way better than I am. So I don't think there's any barriers to people of different ethnicities or gender, really. I think there's too many people like me that people don't care anymore. So...
And kill green light.
If they got rid of the green light, it'd be...
I'm currently going to school for game design at WPI, and I was wondering if there's any extra things that you think I could do at school that would benefit me later on.
Project management of 15-person teams. If you heard it earlier.
I would say work on stuff on your own time outside of school. You know, just whatever really interests you. I feel like I learned the most I ever learned just after class, just mucking around with whatever happened to be really particularly compelling to me. So
we hired our programmer straight out of college, and we didn't care about what, like his, you know, the team that he worked on for this big project in school. We cared about his, you know, extracurricular work, and he had an internship at a studio, and you know, the recommendations from them went so much further than what he did on his group project, where he's one of like, you know, 20 people. So yeah, just really building your skills outside of the school really helps.
And I think anything you do in school is going to inform the games you make and make them interesting and personal to you. So it really doesn't matter what you end up doing in school. If you want to build games, you're going to build them anyway. So.
I actually don't know how this translates to design in particular, but I know with engineers and with artists, I tend to prefer to work with people who have really broad, very solid foundations. So like, I'm a little leery of someone who is like a dedicated, went to school for game engineering, for game programming, or who went to art school for game art or something like that. I prefer someone who has a pretty broad range of experience in their chosen field, and then, you know, has decided to focus on games or has taken an extra interest in games. Where the industry is also going to take you, and you might all of a sudden need someone who has the skills that you didn't think to put on the job posting.
Thank you very much. Give a big round of applause to our